It's my pleasure to introduce Bill Hyder, our Vice President and past president and fellow, and probably a bunch of other things that I should remember, but I don't, who will be talking to us tonight about Cal Bears. Take it away, Bill.
Just one brief background on this. I originally did this in the spring for the so-called dollar guy, the groups we get together, and I was looking at bears on so-called dollars. And there may be some in state or town seals, but otherwise, all the bears on so-called dollars are California uh, related so-called dollars. And I'll explain a little bit why that's significant in a minute. But the other inspiration was from my Iberian ancient coins. I sold that collection, but I kept a few, and one of the few I kept was this pretty grungy as from Spain. With the seated bear on it. What's lost in this is this is actually the base of a palm tree that goes up, and of course that's not present anymore. And Urso name is here on the left side of the male's head, the V being the U of Urso. Anyway, that got me thinking more about bears on medals. So let's start with the history of the bear in California. June 14th, 1846, the Americans revolted against the Mexican rule in Sonoma. And this is an illustration of the so-called bear revolt flag. Let me collapse so I can. This flag or replica of it existed until the 1906 earthquake, and it was destroyed in that earthquake, but it did become the basis for the state flag. This California Republic with the bear on it, people at the time complained that the bear looked more like a pig than a bear. There we go. The California State Seal, the 1849 drawing by Taylor, had a grizzly bear on it. The later 1928 drawing, as the seal was being refined, had a bear on it. And you want to look at the claws. If it has a very long claws, then it's a grizzly bear. And to represent California, it really needs to be the grizzly bear. And as you can see, the state seals changed somewhat over time. But the bear on California tokens and so forth came about quite early. This is from 1850, California gold mines. This was a gaming token. There was not a name, there was not a mine with the name California gold mines. This at one time was thought to be quite rare. They're actually fairly common now, even though they are still expensive. The next use in my collection, and I should say all of these pieces are in my collection, and I've selected a cross section of things to show you the different uses of the bear. This is from 1883 when the Knights Templar had their annual conclave in San Francisco. This badge was made in San Francisco. It looks like it's gold. It's not. It's brass, but it's still a pretty cool badge. And you can see in this close-up of the state seal, the reclining bear, and then the bear as a hanger, of which the bear as a hanger is the most common representation of the bear in California numismatics. And this is an ad from D.W. Laird, a jeweler in San Francisco who made the badge, and it's in its original box. Also 1890, the Native Sons Admissions Day badge. also made in San Francisco. This is not the best representation of the badge, but it is what I have in my collection. And here's the head of the bear on the hanger. And on the button, which I don't have, there was a bear on top of the button. 1891, Swiss colony of California. Again, the state seal, and here's your bear, and you can see the long claws, so you know it's supposed to be a grizzly bear. But what was the most famous grizzly bear? Monarch, most famous grizzly bear. The San Francisco Examiner wanted a grizzly bear, and they hired somebody to set off and capture Monarch. Monarch lived in the backcountry behind Ventura. Monarch had many stories about him that one group of guys that encountered him talked about emptying their guns into Monarch, and Monarch just was unfazed and walked away. Another story is Monarch going after a bull in a pen, and the bull tossed him out. That's the illustration on the right. And the people who were relating this story said they were laughing and enjoying the triumph of the bull when came something against the door, and they all jumped for their guns. It was the discomforted but not discouraged Monarch breaking into their cabin in search of his supper. With 2 or 3 blows of his ponderous paw, the grizzly smashed the door to splinters, but as he poked his head in, he met a volley from 2 rifles and a shotgun. He looked at Jeff reproachfully for the inhospitable reception, turned about and went away more in sorrow than in anger. These are the Examiner's stories building up the story of Monarch, the California grizzly bear. And he was captured, brought to San Francisco. He lived in Woodward Gardens until he was put on display at the Midwinter International Exposition. And this photograph here is Monarch in Woodward Gardens. In 1892, the National Editors Association had their convention in Southern California, and this is the badge that was issued for those attending the convention. The reverse says gold, silver, tin, products of California, and the hanger and the beads are silver. The medal itself is tin, and the bear is gold, and you can see here in the reverse how it's mounted onto the metal stuck through. The Navy Sun of the Golden West issued badges almost every year for Admission Day, and here's a couple of badges with their bear hangers. An example, this is the 1890 40th anniversary of California. And here you see the walking bear on the state seal. Looks almost like the pig on the original flag. And several different versions of that. These are probably Warner out of Philadelphia, because this particular medal issued in 1893 for the U.S. Capitol Centennial, is definitely a Warner piece. And the sort of blurry photograph there is of a page in Klinkner's Spanish catalog for tokens and medals in his piece. And you can see that these larger medals Klinkner likely had made by Warner in Philadelphia and didn't actually make them himself. 1893, California's at the Columbian Exposition, in the California badge by Pascal and Son in San Francisco is a bear walking. The the badge looks gold, but it's brass, and below is an advertising token that had the California building on it from the Columbian Exposition. 1894, California National Guard Marksman's Badge, and the bear's head is on the obverse of the badge. These badges are sterling silver. They were made by Shreve and Company. There are online listings of the National Guard of California with the people's serial number. I haven't found a listing that has this particular serial number, so I can't tell you who received it, but it is marked with the badge number of the National Guard member. Then comes the 1894 Midwinter Official Medal with the state seal of obverses. The one on the left is by Barber. Was struck at the exposition, but the dies were done by Barber. Again, the bear is closer to that bear on the revolt flag, more like a pig, maybe a small black bear. On Moise's version of the state seal, you can see the claws, and he's definitely got a grizzly bear on his version of the state seal. Monarch was on display at the Midwinter Exposition. He was in a big pit. This photograph from 1894 as he's reaching up towards the top of the pit, but it was too deep for him to get out. And bears did appear on other medals from the fair. This particular view with a bear overlooking the exposition, the layout of the exposition buildings is fairly accurate. It's probably as close as anything except for the final drawings. The pyramid right here is the Santa Barbara building. The Museum of Art is here. This view of the crag above the thing with the bear looking over, there is Strawberry Hill there, but it does not look like that. But this is a technique out of the Middle Ages of showing city views and adding something to sort of highlight it. And you do have the Golden Gate in the background. This is a rare souvenir. I think there were several made, but they were not a regular issue of the exposition. I have this one in aluminum, and there's one with a brass outer ring and the aluminum inner thing, and that's the only two that I've ever encountered. California Society of Pioneers badge. This is the New England Pioneers. Again, the bear on the hanger. The original badges were gold. This one was made in the 1890s by Eugene H. Richards in Boston. So this would have gone to somebody who was a California pioneer, but by the 1890s in Boston, in the East Coast area. Native Sons of the Golden West, Santa Rosa Admission Day, 1897. This is one of my favorite bears, Ma Bear and Pa Bear, ready to dance at the celebration. They have their parasol. Well, she has her parasol in hand. He has his walking stick. They're dressed up for a fine celebration for the admission day in 1897. 1899, California volunteers are returning from Manila, and they had a grand parade in San Francisco. This was a souvenir badge sold for the parade. Again, the bear on the hanger. And just as a note of our earlier conversation, this is from Jerry Schimmel's collection back when he started selling pieces years ago through Dwayne Feisel. The returning volunteers were awarded a badge for their service. This was uh, Hammer and Smith. I forget the name exact. I think it's Hammer and something in San Francisco. Did the design and cut the dies. They were struck in the evening at the U.S. Mint. They went to the Mint and asked if they would strike the metals, and the Mint said no. They wrote to Philadelphia, and the director of the Mint said, go ahead and strike the metals off hours, and they just got to pay the labor of the guys that do the striking. What's interesting here is you've got a seated bear, the bear flag, but I like the bear on the hanger. You see the long claws of the grizzly bear, and I'm assuming that's supposed to be his tongue hanging out of his mouth. There's no other way I can explain it, and I don't know what the symbolism is of that.
Bill, you keep mentioning the long claws of a
Yes,
grizzly. Another way you can also tell grizzlies from black bears and other smaller bears is a grizzly always has a hump near
right,
the shoulder on the back.
right. But when you just got them from the front, yeah, the claws are the dead ringer.
But many of your medals did show the hump.
Yes, here they are again.
Indeed.
This is from 1900, again, admission day. This is from Ruse Brothers. And I'm not sure who struck this medal, although it could have been Moise. Yes, this is a Moise medal. It's signed right here. 1903, the Grand Army of the Republic. This bear looks different from the others because this bear was engraved and struck by Pettibone Brothers in Cincinnati. So it's their version of the grizzly bear. And as Ed said, you've got the distinctive hump and the long claws. And this was for the GAR encampment in San Francisco in 1903. 1904, Navy Sons of the Golden West again for the launch of the armored cruiser California. And you've got two bears here. Here you've got a bear on the hanger. Actually, you've got three bears, the bear on the flag and the bear on the state seal. That's not a very pronounced hump on this one, but you do have the long claws. So you know it's supposed to be a grizzly bear. And while this one is more in that so-called pig shape, it does have the hump to let you know that it's a grizzly bear. And this is by W.K. Vanderslice in San Francisco. Portola Festival, so-called dollar, patent applied for, and you've got a bear on the reverse. Again, this bear is not the best representation of all of them, but the Portola festivals were leading up to the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition. It was sort of the run-throughs in the years leading up to the festival. And another one of my favorites is the dancing bear on the 1913 Portola Festival medal. This comes as a watch fob. It comes as a 19mm medal. So this was in various different sizes, but all with the dancing lady and the dancing bear, I'm assuming, holding key to the city. And this is Monarch. So shortly after 1913, Monarch passed away. By that time, he was in the zoo that was starting in San Francisco. He was skinned and stuffed, and he's in the California Academy of Sciences. He used to be on display. I remember as a teenager visiting the Academy, and he was right there as a living bear and a representation of the California flag. Today, he's not on display anymore, and I have no idea what shape he's in, but he's in storage. Monarch was buried, his carcass after being skinned, and some years later, his grave was dug up and his bones were recovered, and they're now at UC Berkeley in their collections. There was always some debate as to whether or not he was really a grizzly bear, but so they did DNA studies and that kind of stuff, and he's a grizzly bear. He also became a symbol of the rebirth of the city, undaunted. That's monarch over the city, the arrows in him, that he was, shot multiple times, and nobody ever was able to bring him down. So he became the symbol of the rebirth of San Francisco. And I like this particular watch fob from the exposition, monarch holding the state seal in his paws. Probably out of all, I have several favorites. My favorite bear, grizzly bear, is on the this particular PPIE so-called dollar, and we gave it the name the Laughing Bear. I just love him looking out from that lady with a big grin on his face. And you can't see his hump; those long claws leave no doubt, but that you're looking at there. USS California, again, a new USS California, launched in 1919 from the Navy shipyard Mare Island. And this particular watch fob was made by F.J. Buchart in the die sinking department at Mare Island Naval Yard. It's a little worn, but still, it's clearly a bear, and we have the bear flag and the California poppies on the reverse. Trade tokens. This is a good four from the days of '49 from Vernon, California. It's good for $1 on one side and good for 2 bits in trade on the other side at the Vernon Country Club. Now, if you know anything about Vernon and Vernon's history, Vernon is a small town. I don't know that it still has the right to call themselves a town anymore, but it's virtually 100% industrial area. It had, in the early 1990, it had maybe 100 some odd people. 10 years later, maybe had 200 some odd people. People filled with factories, and most of the people that lived in town were related. They elected themselves as mayor and to the city council, taxed the hell out of industry, and they were all quite wealthy, and they never did anything because their constituents were industry. But back around 1920, they did issue a good four when they still had some pretensions to being a real town. Here's another semi-dancing bear. This is the Julian mining scam. It's an unlisted so-called dollar. It'll be in the new book. The mine was the New Monte Cristo mine. The owner had stocks made up in 1927, and he was selling stocks in the mine and selling these big silver pieces. You can see on the end, it's stamped sterling silver. While the mine was a scam, so the stocks he was selling were a scam. This is also not sterling silver, it's silver plated. So everything associated with the New Monte Cristo mine was a scam in 1927. 1932, the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Again, on this souvenir, you have the grizzly bear representing California. And then the most curious version of the state seal is from the 1948 centennial of gold discovery. Besides the miner, you have Minerva with her shield, Fort Point, the Golden Gate, her spear, and the bear, instead of being at her side, is on a little platform behind her in the sky. Almost looks like he's at the end of a pole, but he's actually just behind the spear. And so I'll almost end with an early photograph of Monarch and a later photograph after Monarch's been stuffed and in the California Academy of Sciences. And with that, I'll say thank you. The best of California forever. California State Parks, the bear is a symbol of the Parks and Recreation. This medal and others like it are often sold on eBay. It's from 1928. These are actually from the 1970s and 1980s, and 1928 relates to the founding of Parks and Recreation.
Right.
And with that, I'm done.
Thank you, Bill.